All right, YouTube, we are back. I swear, y'all. I swear, for someone who grew up in that sandwich generation and had MySpace and all of that, some of this stuff is like it's uh it's like hieroglyphics to me sometimes. Anyways, guys, for those of you that have been engaging with the content, I just want to say I'm really, really thankful. I've been getting really, really good feedback on the content. I will say, I think I might have talked about it a little bit last week. It's hard. It's hard. It's challenging. Let me say it's challenging to condense like all of this information in a way that makes it easy for you guys to understand because it was not that easy in law school when I was learning it, especially since we had to learn it from like a historical perspective. So that made it a little bit more challenging as well. And so that has been my main concern is how do I create quality content for you guys that is engaging, that teaches you something, that empowers you, um, and just gives you that history lesson or that knowledge that maybe you didn't have before, but in a way that the everyday person can understand. Because I think I was telling you guys last week, these Supreme Court cases can be hundreds of pages long sometimes, and ain't nobody trying to read all that. So I really appreciate every single person that watches the videos, engages with the content, has meaningful discussion, even if it's discussion that's a little controversial. I really, really think that it's important for us to be having these conversations, especially right now. I don't know that social media is the best place to have really like nuanced conversation that requires us to think deeply. I think so. Those conversations are best had in person because you can't really tell someone's tone from how they write, right? And sometimes we can misconstrue things, and we only have so many characters that we can use. But I try to give you guys as much information as possible, and I do really appreciate the feedback that I've been getting and the engagement that I've been getting. Um, this week, we are talking about more about the civil rights movement, specifically how the Equal Protection Clause has been applied to Black Americans, how Black Americans have continued to push the needle forward. We're diving into things that are a little bit more relevant to today. So, we're talking about affirmative action, we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? Um, we're talking about what it means to be a citizen and citizenship and how Black Americans um, fight to be recognized as full human beings and be protected under the Constitution has actually helped to benefit more people than just Black Americans, right? Because a lot of what Black Americans did and fought for has also shaped immigration and immigration reform. And a lot of people have benefited from a lot of that early work that Black Americans did in the way that they have been able to get citizenship in America. So, we're talking about things that are a little more relevant, things that we're seeing happening currently. But I think that the last couple of weeks of kind of background of how we got here was extremely important. One thing I noticed too that you guys are seeing is that none of this is new, right? These are battles that we're still fighting, conversations that we're still having hundreds of years later. We're seeing a lot of the same playbook politically, where people are moving the goalposts, doing things that fit their agenda. These things are not new. I just think that there's a lot of information overload right now, and it's by design. The information overload, I think, is designed to make us tired, make us feel defeated, make us feel like there's no point in questioning why things are happening the way that they do. And when you stop questioning, when you stop being curious, then you allow someone to create the story that they want to push. So I think it's really important for you guys to continue to remain curious and ask questions and demand answers of the questions that you're asking, right? So I hope that the material that I've been covering and the things that we've been discussing are helping you guys to do that. Again, I'm here. I'm going to look through the comments on TikTok just to see if there are any questions that you guys have dropped in here, because we've had some pretty good conversation. With that being said, I do want to talk about something that I posted earlier last week in regards to how Black Americans have shaped immigration, right? So there was a comment that was left on one of the videos talking about how, that person felt as though there were people that were not Black American that benefited more from the fight that Black Americans fought, right? And that their struggle was not the same as Black American struggle. And I absolutely agree with that. I think that my response back did not include nuance that was necessary, right? So what I specifically said originally was that to give an additional perspective, number one, immigrants are not treated well in this country, and I'm going to be more specific. Black and Latino immigrants are not treated well in this country. Poor immigrants are not treated well in America. I think America has just a problem in general when it comes to how immigrants are treated, how immigrants are labeled, which is funny for a country that was established by immigrants because the Europeans are not from the Americas, right? I think it's very interesting to see how immigration and even the label of immigrant has been criminalized and vilified in this country, a country that was started by immigrants. But what I did, which I think lacked nuance, was that I stated that the original enslaved people that were brought here in the transatlantic slave trade could be considered the first immigrants. And I do want to double back on that comment because I do recognize where in the past, when Black people have talked about the advancement of Black people in this country in modern day, it has been reduced to, oh, they weren't slaves, they were immigrants. That is absolutely not what I'm trying to do at all, okay? And that was not the intent behind what I said. I would absolutely never, as a Black person, reduce the Black American experience to that of solely one of immigration, right? Now, the meaning of immigrant is someone who comes to dwell in a place that is not originally theirs. They weren't born there. But I do absolutely agree with that commenter. And there was another commenter as well who made that distinction that Black Americans who are descendants of enslaved people, those enslaved people were not brought here voluntarily. They were absolutely brought here against their will. And so to reduce it by saying like they weren't slaves, they were immigrants is absolutely whitewashing that history, which is not my intention and something that I would never do. What I do think my intention is to provide an additional context by giving an understanding that the Black American experience, once you come to this country, no one is stopping you and asking you like, so what country are you from? And I do think that distinctions between race and ethnicity, national origin, all of that require a level of nuance that people don't necessarily do. I live a black woman's experience, right? Because that's what people see. No, if a police officer stopped me, he wouldn't be like, speak some patois. You know what I'm saying? He sees a Black woman, he or she sees a Black woman and is going to treat me as such. And I do think that it's damaging for us to do diaspora wars with each other because the Black experience is the Black experience. And I do feel like at this point in time, all Black people need to come together, learn our history, our collective history, and how intertwined all of our collective histories are, and fight for one another. Absolutely. And I will say, as a child of immigrants, that the Black American experience, especially American slavery, was arguably the most brutal. This is a country who benefited off of generational slavery. When you look at the enslavement of those slaves that ended up in the Caribbean or in other places, you maybe had a few generations, if that, maybe 2 or 3 generations of slaves. Everything about this country was built on the backs of slaves. And it's generational slavery. The institutions that people profit off of in America are based on the oppression of the Black American people. And so when we look at it in that context, I don't think that it is productive, and I don't think that it's beneficial for anyone of the African diaspora to then try to differentiate themselves. When you come to America, you are living a Black American experience. Okay, whether you like it or not, that is how you're being treated. And I do think that there's a certain level of acquiescence to white supremacy if you come into the conversation feeling like you are different. Okay, you came to this country as an immigrant. That means you came here voluntarily. And so you are part of that Black American experience now. And I absolutely believe that there's a nuance that needs to be had when we're having these types of discussions. I also think these diaspora wars are what prevent the history of how intertwined we are from being told. We cannot sit here and try to differentiate ourselves. If we are here for Black liberation, then it needs to be liberation across the board for all of us, not just a few of us. Not, we're up here and you're down here. It absolutely, we got to stop doing that. So I did want to make sure that I backtracked on that, not necessarily backtracking, but that I clarified that and I gave validation to, I can't remember who that person is. I hope you're on this live, but I absolutely want to give validation to your sentiment. And I do want to absolutely add that nuance to the Black American experience as well. I'm going to hop right back in here. I think it's great that they're looking over again. Yes, Tan. This reparations argument, this talk, this debate that's been being had for years, I don't even understand why. It's still a topic for debate, to be quite honest. Black people in this country are owed a lot. And I don't even think that there's an adequate number that you could put on the reparations that are owed. I just don't. I mean, we can see how our economic protests are panning out right now when it comes to the boycotts of corporations like Target and Walmart, which I'm so extremely proud of our community for banding together and doing that. And I know it's also a topic of debate, but when we see the market share of a huge corporation like Target going down simply because our community decided that we were no longer going to support someone who didn't support us, it goes to show the influence that we have. And so to even be able to give an adequate number to reparations, like how can we do that? How can we do that? Because so much of this country has been built by Black people. And so much of the privilege that a lot of people share, or that a lot of people have, is on the backs of Black people. So, I mean, land that because of Kendrick Lamar and his halftime show performance, I think we've brought back up the discussion of 40 acres and a mule and what people thought 40 acres was, and the fact that those people didn't get that. So maybe that's where we start. When you look at the history of home ownership and land ownership in this country, I think you see a direct link in the gap of wealth. So maybe we start there. Maybe we start reallocating land. I'm concerned. Oh, Veronica, yes. I'm concerned about future funding of HBCUs. I'm very concerned. In my home state of Florida right now, the governor is doing some very diabolical things, right? We just saw the Department of Education roll out an announcement about the defunding of anything that has to do with racial studies, and schools that offer classes like that. So what do you do when that applies to HBCUs, right? Because that's the whole experience at an HBCU. like I said, I'm from Florida, so there was a similar type piece of legislation that was passed a few years ago about anti wokeness and DEI and all of that. The rollback, excuse me, on DEI in Florida happened at least 2 to 3 years ago, or started happening 2 to 3 years ago, and that was a concern that we had as well. Um, and there was apparently a provision in the legislation that was an exception for HBCUs, but I knew that wasn't going to last long. And HBCUs are already so severely underfunded that it is a little scary to think about, like, where are we going to go from here? But I do think that at this point, that is where mutual aid and community is going to have to come in to bridge that gap, because HBCUs, if they weren't needed before, they're going to be needed now. Absolutely. Another concern that I have as a member of a Divine Nine organization is, where do our organizations fall, right? Because we are all considered 501c7 organizations under tax code. So if some legislation is being rolled out that impacts nonprofits, my concern too is, what does it look like for the future of Black Greek letter organizations that do a lot of boots on the ground work? My organization, Zeta Phi Beta, is a community conscious action oriented organization. We're a service organization. We've been around for over 100 years. Um, I it's concerning times. It's concerning times. But what I do hope is that we continue to fight. As you guys know, there's litigation happening all across the country in regards to a lot of these executive orders. A lot of things are being rolled back because they're unconstitutional. Um, I think that the executive branch has now petitioned the Supreme Court to decide whether or not the president has the ability to unilaterally fire tenured federal workers, right? Like the head of the FBI, the head of the Department of Justice, things of that nature, people who were appointed by a previous president. Is the new president able to just fire them at will? And I think that that is going to be a very impactful Supreme Court decision, because the executive branch already holds a lot of power as is. And so we have to hold on to the power that we still have, though, back to those checks and balances, right? But there are legitimate concerns about what we see happening right now. So again, I'm here if you guys have any questions about anything that we've gone over in class so far, anything that you guys see on the syllabus coming up, especially the material that we'll be covering this week. And then, of course, if you guys have questions about anything that you're just seeing current day going on in the news, or just in general. I do want to share too, for those that are on the live with us, that I do have a YouTube channel that all of this content is housed on as well. So in the event that TikTok does something real weird, the content will still be available on YouTube. The YouTube link is in the link tree in my bio, but it is Black and Briefed on YouTube. Black and Briefed. So the full spelling, Black and Briefed on YouTube. All of the content is also housed there as well. And then, of course, the content is here on the Hillman Talk playlist on my page. But like I said, I believe that TikTok is starting to shadow ban Hill Talk or Hillman Talk. I'm sure that if you guys are on TikTok, you've seen there's a little bit of drama going on with that. Anyways, ain't no drama over here. Class is still in session. I will still be here for you guys. So, come to my page either here or on the YouTube as well. You're not getting notifications. Veronica, when you say not getting notifications, you mean from YouTube, or you're not getting notifications on TikTok? All right. Let's see. TikTok. Okay. Yeah. I think that there is a setting where you can. I think there's a setting where you can get notifications for the creators that you want to see, like if they post new videos, because I get them for the creators that I interact with. But yeah, TikTok is doing something really funky right now. And it's something that we already kind of saw this play coming when the Hillman Talk train started, that this might be content that starts to get suppressed. I know that I have tried to comment back to some people's comments, and my comments have gotten flagged for community guidelines violations. I don't know. It's just, I guess it's the material. Um, See, I just got a notification. Some comments in this live were filtered to protect the community's experience. I don't know, child. And it is so arbitrary. You never really know what they're going to flag. But I do think that maybe some of the more like political stuff is probably what they're flagging. You know, it's unfortunate that we can't just freely spread knowledge on this app. But I will still be here. So as long as you are able to search my page, it'll still be on there. And then if you follow the YouTube channel, if you hit the bell button, then you will get notified every time I post a new video or when I go live on YouTube. So worst case scenario, YouTube has been strong for years and it ain't going nowhere. So at least we'll be there. Let me know, you guys, how has the content been? Are you guys understanding the content? Again, I know these cases can be very, very heavy. I try to give as much background information as I can, so you guys understand like what these cases mean, what was going on, who are the parties, why were they suing, and then of course the court's reasoning behind it. But I want to make sure that you guys are enjoying the content, that you're getting something out of it that is easy to understand. And if there's anything that you guys are looking for, particularly as we move forward throughout the rest of our 8 weeks together. Awesome. Thank you, Tan. That's good to know. Okay, so I'm gonna just keep doing what I'm doing. Like I said, sometimes it can be challenging to make it as simple as possible, but I absolutely, yeah, I usually watch it more than once. Yeah, sometimes you do, because it's jam packed. And there are a lot of Supreme Court cases that are important, and I wish that I could give you guys all of the knowledge at one time, but it would be overwhelming. But I absolutely think that this is stuff that people need to know without it being behind a paywall, right? I'm going to be a little controversial, and I'm going to talk about, are we a part of a protected class? According to Supreme Court precedent, if you are if it's discrimination based on race, that is absolutely a protected class. They base it on what's called an immutable characteristic. Immutable meaning that it's not something that you chose and it's not something that you could change willingly. So your race is not something that you chose, right? You were born as a Black person, you were born as a Latino, you were born as a Caucasian. That is an immutable characteristic. But the principle behind protected classes is to protect the least of us. So when you start to see things shift, like when we talk about affirmative action, right? Affirmative action was a direct connection to the Civil Rights Act and Brown v. Board of Education. Affirmative action itself was not something that the Supreme Court mandated. It was a way that the executive branch righted their wrongs, essentially, right? So if we have Plessy versus Ferguson that we read about last week, right, where the Supreme Court said separate but equal, we knew, just knowing our history and the history of the civil rights movement, that things were not equal. The white water fountains were nicer than the black water fountains. The white schools had better funding, nicer facilities, more books than black schools, right? So how can we say that we're separate, but we're equal? In the eyes of the law at that time, as long as there was something that black people could go to, that was equal. So white people got a school, you got a school. It doesn't matter what your school looks like. It don't matter if them kids don't have the books, if they don't have no lunch over there, we gave you something. In Brown v. Board of Education, the Supreme Court said that separate but equal is not equal, primarily because of the work that Thurgood Marshall and Constance Baker Motley did, bringing in sociologists that showed that, hey, when we do this doll test, which for, I couldn't really go into depth, but I'll go into depth now. So the doll test that was used in the Brown v. Board of Education case was a test that sociologists did with Black children, and they gave Black children a white doll and a black doll. And so they asked the children specific questions about what they felt about each doll. So the question might be something as simple as like, which doll do you think is prettier, right? Which doll you think comes from a two-parent household, right? Things of that nature. And it was a very revealing test because in Black children, there was a direct correlation between their race and what they perceived about the worth of the doll. So in many cases, the Black child, when asked which doll is prettier, would choose the white doll over the black doll. Which doll do you think has both parents? They would choose the white doll over the black doll. So it showed that while, yes, there's a white doll and a black doll, right? And then they're both separate, they're not equal. And so in separating children and giving them different facilities, you're messing with their sense of self-worth. And the court agreed with them. And that's where the integration of schools came in. But those were all acts that the executive branch did in order to implement what the Supreme Court said. And that is where we get affirmative action. Affirmative action by itself was not something that the Supreme Court said, yes, y'all need to do. Affirmative action is something that the government created to correct separate but equal. So on that basis, affirmative action is supposed to help the least of us get an even playing field with those who have always benefited from those systems. So when we talk about something like reverse racism and affirmative action, you as a Black person got a seat at a college, and because you got a seat at that college, there was a white student that didn't get it. It doesn't make sense because traditionally white kids have been able to go to college. When we talk about Ivy Leagues, right? Traditionally, it's more white kids that go to Ivy Leagues or get accepted than Black kids. So how, like, the math isn't mathing, right? Affirmative action is used to correct what has been done wrong. And affirmative action doesn't take away merit, right? Like, you're not getting C's in high school and then getting accepted into Harvard, even as a Black student. If you're a Black student that's applying to Harvard, you already have the grades. So we're not picking unqualified people. We're saying that we're correcting a wrong, because before Harvard wouldn't even consider the Black student who was qualified. Now we're telling Harvard, no, you need to go diversify your pool and find some Black, because we know it's Black kids out here who are smart, who probably deserve to be at Harvard, right? So yes, Tan, we are absolutely, if you are a Black person, if you are Latino, if you are any racial minority, you are considered a part of a protected class because it is an immutable characteristic. Now, when we branch out to other groups of people, the immutable characteristic classification has also been used. I'm sorry. Will hide comments that are similar to those abused or previously flagged in live? Turn on community flag. Okay, I don't know what's going on, y'all, but okay. Anyways, back to what I was saying. When we branch out to other groups, right, the immutable characteristic argument has also been used in the fight for gay rights and trans rights, because the argument there is that I didn't choose my sexuality. I didn't choose my gender. Gender also can be considered a protected class. That's the reason why we were able to implement certain laws and include women when we talk about DEI. And affirmative action is not just limited to racial groups. Affirmative action, especially if you work in human resources, you study this as well. Affirmative action includes like having a certain amount of women in your your employee base, having a certain amount of women in your entering class at a college. It affects more than just Black people. It's put under a Black lens because we didn't get it until Black people fought for it. Okay. And this is where the confusion is happening. And this is the way that people can bend things. When you don't know something, this is the way that they're able to bend things and pervert, for lack of a better word, pervert things to fit their agenda. DEI and affirmative action came as a direct result of the oppression of Black people. Black people fought for it, but the implementation and the application of DEI and affirmative action don't just benefit Black people. Okay. And for argument's sake, it probably benefited us the least, right? When we look at the numbers, everyone is grouped into it. The veterans that are finding out that DEI is what gives them veteran preference. So I feel like I just went off on a tangent answering your question, but yes, we are part of a protected class. So what about police brutality? Okay, hold on. A-Legs, oh my God, is this a class session or office hours? It is office hours. The classes are in the Hillman Talk playlist on my page, but you can also go to the link in my bio, and there's a link to the YouTube channel as well. So in the event that TikTok starts acting wonky again, TikTok has been suppressing content of professors that are a part of Hillman Talk. You can always go to the YouTube, click the notification bell to make sure you get notified whenever I post new content on there. But this is office hours. You're free to stay and ask questions. I would love to have you, and hopefully you're able to catch the content, because we still have a lot more. Okay, so Tan, so what about police brutality during civil rights marches regarding protected classes? Now remember, why was that flagged? Oh my gosh. Okay, TikTok is doing something wonky because it's flagging comments that really should not be being flagged. So I'm going to take off community flagged comments. Sorry, y'all. See, they doing wonky stuff already. Police brutality during civil rights marches regarding protected classes. Okay, so when we talk about, I don't know if you're talking about the civil rights marches from like the 50s and the 60s. Remember, these protections weren't really there. Now, when we talk about protection, okay, this is back to the checks and balances and the differences between the branches of government. When we talk about the judicial branch, which is the Supreme Court, the protected classes goes to what's called scrutiny, a level of scrutiny. Remember, when we talked about checks and balances, we talked about the fact that the Congress, the legislative branch, they make or write the laws. The judicial branch interprets the application of those laws, and then the executive branch executes those laws, right? So in most of the Supreme Court cases, the court is telling the executive branch, this is how you should enforce this law. All right. And usually in a lot of these cases, the executive branch has done something wrong. Okay. So the Supreme Court has to step in and say, hey, hold your horses. That's not how this works. Now, what I also want to say is that the executive branch is further than just the feds. Okay, so we could be talking about the executive branch of a state where a citizen is suing the state for doing something to them that they shouldn't. Okay. There are micro levels and macro levels, but the cases that we're reading are the Supreme Court of the United States, all right? And what they're telling the executive branch, which is the president and all the different departments underneath the president, this is how you're supposed to apply this law. When there is a protected class that is being discussed in a case that goes before the Supreme Court has said that there are different levels of what's called scrutiny that they will look at. Now, what most people know about the law, when you like watch like Law and Order SVU and stuff like that, you hear about burdens of proof. Okay, so the burden of proof is the burden of proof in a criminal case is beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. Okay. And so if you're a juror and there's a reasonable doubt that you have that this person committed the crime, you're not supposed to convict them of it because the state has not met its burden. When we go into the appellate world, right, and we're talking about scrutiny, it's kind of a similar principle. The court will apply what is called strict scrutiny to a certain certain protected classes. So when we're talking about discrimination on the basis of race again being an immutable characteristic, meaning I was born this way, I'm not able to change this about myself. So therefore I shouldn't be discriminated against for something that is not within my control. The court has said that they are going to apply what is called strict scrutiny. Okay, so strict scrutiny is a review standard that the Supreme Court uses to determine whether or not a law that is being applied in a discriminatory way is constitutional. Okay, and it's the highest standard of review. So that means that the government has to show that there is no other way that they can be fair or just without discriminating in this particular way. And it's like 3 prongs. I had to look it up real quick because I don't want to confuse the prongs. The government has to show that the law serves a compelling government interest. Compelling government interest is usually like the health, safety, and welfare of us, right? The citizens. The law must be narrowly tailored. Narrowly tailored means like we're only focusing on this one issue. We're not looping in a bunch of stuff. It's narrowly tailored, which means it's only this one issue that this law is being applied to. And then the law must be the least restrictive means to achieve that interest. Meaning, like, if you're going to violate this person's rights, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about violations of constitutional rights. What the Supreme Court is saying is if you're going to violate this person's rights, you better make sure it's for a good reason. You better make sure that it's only this particular right and it's not spilling into anything else. And you better make sure there wasn't any better way for you to do this. Okay. So, an example of this, and we're going to actually read this case in a couple of weeks, is what's called the Korematsu versus United States case. This was a case that happened during World War II, going back to my immigration video, where the United States government set up internment camps where they housed Japanese American Japanese people or people of Japanese descent that were here in America during World War II. Okay. They applied strict scrutiny during the review of that case. And that is because, like, Japan, being Japanese is not a race. It's national origin. That's where my people are from, right? But that is considered a protected class. So when we talk about protected class, again, the government has to show 3 things in order to be able to discriminate. They have to show that there's a compelling government interest at stake here. They have to show that this law only applies to one specific thing, and then 3, that there was no other way for this law to be applied. So going back to your question, Tam, when we talk about the civil rights or the police brutality during civil rights marches, if that's a violation of constitutional rights, absolutely. It violates your ability to live life, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? and free of bodily harm, and it's a state or a government action, that's absolutely going to be looked at under strict scrutiny. But that's just how it applies to the court. So I do want to make that clear that protected classes only came from the Supreme Court having to look over these cases and figure out how are we going to make the best decision for everyone involved. Okay, so it doesn't prevent people from abusing their power. It just allows us a means of justice if they do that. Okay, that's the reason why we still see things happening to this day. But it's also the reason why it's very, very important to make sure that we're thinking about what benefits the most people and not just the few, and the few in power at that, right? All right, so that was that was a bit of a discussion. Does anyone else have any questions, anything that you guys want to talk about, either again about the content that we've already gone over, the content that is going to be where we're going to go over this week and in the weeks to come, or anything that you guys are seeing currently that you may be curious about, or just any questions that you guys have ever had in general. I'm going to go back and see if I missed anybody. Okay. I think earlier I was talking about the content, right? I think that it's extremely important for us to share this information and to have these conversations, especially now when you see a lot of censorship, when the freedom to access information is being tampered with. It's extremely important for us to not put this stuff behind a paywall, okay? And so with that being said, the Hillman talk issue is a bit of a controversial issue that's going on right now. And I want to make it clear that I am all for the Hillman talk movement. Okay, what Dr. Barlow sparked, even if it was on accident, was something I feel like is very revolutionary and it's very important. I started sharing this information because I had so many friends and family members who, they're not lawyers, they didn't go to law school. And a lot of what I learned only came from my experience of going to a historically Black law school. Okay, I don't think I would have learned things the way that I did if I had gone to one that wasn't historically Black. But there's just an overall feeling of despair and a feeling of like, is there anything that we can do? And so when Dr. Barlow kind of sparked this movement by accident, number one, I wanted to be in Dr. Barlow's class. Let's make that clear. And I'm auditing her class currently. But it sparked the desire in me to share what I have with other people, because I feel like people need to know that they have a way to fight back. If we lose hope, we lose everything in this period of time. And so I just wanted to be able to give hope where I could. That's what I came into it for. I've been, if you guys look at my page on TikTok, I've been doing content creation for quite some time. I'm an attorney by day. I was doing content creation by night because I enjoyed it. And I was at a place, and I'm still at a place in my life right now where I'm pivoting, right? But I'm using my law degree for good, okay? But my intention was never to monetize off of what I'm doing. And the information that I'm giving and the content that I'm giving you guys will never be behind a paywall, okay? I am for the Hillman Talk movement. I've always been wary of the Hillman Talk organization because I didn't really understand, like, what is the end game of what we're doing here? You know what I'm saying? Like, from my understanding, like this is supposed to be something that is like housed in one place, and this is going to be something where like they were trying to make it like an accredited institution, which I was like, oh, okay. I can see where there may have been good intent behind it, but the method just, it was peculiar to me. And I think what made it the most peculiar was the fact that from, I know from my personal experience, I haven't had anyone from Hillman Talk, the institution, reach out to me since I started making this content. I know that I'm included in at least one of the faculty rosters, but no one has ever reached out to me. I've seen content because I was a content creator before this. So I've been scrolling through TikTok and I've seen people say, hey, I'm an advisor, faculty, look in your email, or, make sure you're in your emails, you have your welcome packet and stuff. And I was like, I don't have anything, right? I've had people reach out to me and say, hey, I enrolled in the class through Hillman Talk. I was never notified. And it's not, let's be real, y'all, this is not real, okay? This is not a real university. I'm giving you guys the knowledge that I have because that's what I was passionate about. That's what I wanted to do. This is not a real thing. Hillman College came from a different world, a show that aired in the 90s that is well, and it's a beloved thing, but it's not a real thing. And I do think that it's a little disingenuous to try to make this more than just a revolutionary movement for our community to get knowledge that they're trying to take away from us. Okay, that's just the way that I feel about it. So I want to make it very clear that no matter what happens with Hillman Talk as an institution, no matter what drama is happening, race and rights will still be happening right here. Okay, it'll still be happening right here. It'll still be housed on YouTube. I will never put it behind a paywall for y'all. I will say that doing this has sparked some ideas in my head for what my next steps will be. Again, I'm in the middle of like a career pivot and a life pivot. And I've shared it before that this election really like radicalized me in the sense of I feel like I need to be doing more for my community. So this has sparked some ideas, but race and rights in and of itself is for you guys. It is for you guys. And I put my heart and soul into it. I put a lot of work into it. I hope that those who are a part of the entity of Hillman Talk show a true appreciation for the work, the volunteer work that real professors and real professionals are doing to give the TikTok community content. Because there is no Hillman Talk if there isn't us. Dr. Barlow is sharing what she can, but she originally did this for her actual paying students at NCAT. The rest of us are doing it for the love of our community. So I do hope that those that are a part of the Hillman Talk University entity fully respect that and respect the work that we're putting in and respect the fact that we are not doing it for monetization. Like, we're not. Now, I have enough followers and I appreciate, I started off at like a little over 2,000 and now I'm over 90,000 followers. So I'm very appreciative of all of you guys. And it has opened up opportunities that I didn't have before when I was sick. Dr. Barlow, busy, yes, she's very, very busy, okay? This has opened up opportunities that I did not have when I was at 2,000. But what I'm doing for y'all is because I love my community. I love my people. And so I want to give you guys the best that I can and the best that I have. And I don't know, it just sucks. It sucks to see how things have gone. Trevino, I see you on YouTube. I appreciate you being here. You're so great. Our class is still on for Tuesday, 6:30. There's no specific time on, I try to drop the content before 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So just look out. If you're on YouTube, hit the notification bell. You'll get notified when I upload. And then of course on TikTok, hopefully they'll show you all the stuff. But no specific time for class. The only specific time that we have is our office hours, which are 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday nights, okay? I was so inspired. Oh. And I truly, truly hope, I know that what we're seeing on social media right now with Hillman Talk is very disheartening. As someone who went to an HBCU where seeing some of those same issues come up on a grander scale. Social media is not the place for us to have these types of community discussions because we're among mixed company. And I don't care. I'm gonna protect my people. I'm very community oriented. So this is not the place for us to have those types of discussions. However, I really do believe that as we move forward in such treacherous times, our community does need to start having discussions about doing things the right way. I will say this too, because as an attorney, it's been grinding my gears, y'all. Nobody owns Hillman Talk. Nobody. There are pending trademark and this is coming from someone who practiced intellectual property. I had a firm for a hot second, about 2 years, where I did trademarks and copyrights. Okay, so I practiced intellectual property. You girl know a little something. Okay, a pending trademark application does not give you trademark rights. All it does is give you a place in line. Okay, so when we talk about trademark rights, it is usually first to file, first in right, meaning if you are the first person to file the application, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office is going to give you first priority of trademark protection. But even still, you still have to prove that you are using it first. Okay. And when you file a trademark application, you have what's called a publication period, which means like, okay, you file a trademark application. In this case, we'll say Hillman Talk, right? I file a trademark application for Hillman Talk. You have to specify what's called certain classes, meaning like, okay, I'm filing a trademark application for the use of Hillman Talk for educational purposes. Okay. Coco, I'm about to get to that in a second. All right. So I file in a certain class. Let's say I file for educational purposes, for classes, online classes, whatever, in the education space. The USPTO is going to be the first person to tell you can't use it, right? So that's going to touch on that, Coco. There's already trademark rights associated with Hillman. All right. I believe, don't quote me on this part, I believe Bill Cosby owns Hillman. He has actual trademark, as in he has the little R, that means registered. That's what that R means. He has registered trademark rights for the use of Hillman. When you file a trademark application, the USPTO is going to go through it and look and see if there are any what's called confusingly similar marks. Meaning, would a normal everyday person look at your mark and someone else's mark and confuse the two? I'll give you an example, okay? Because remember I said when you file your application with the trademark office, you have to file it under certain classes, okay? I'll give you an example. You have Delta Airlines and then you have Delta Faucets, okay? Both Delta. Both companies have a trademark for the use of Delta. Now we're asking ourselves, how can they both have a trademark for the use of the word Delta? I'll tell you why. Because both companies trademark Delta under different classes. Delta Airlines trademarked it under airlines. Delta Faucets trademarked it under like housewares, appliances, things of that nature. So it's very unlikely that you are going to confuse Delta Airlines with Delta Faucets and think that that's the same company. Okay, so and on top of that, trademark rights give your business an asset, because what you can do is say I'm Bill Cosby and I own Hillman, and someone files a trademark application for the use of the word Hillman Talk. Not so fast. Okay. Hey, whoever is trying to file for trademark rights for Hillman Talk, I'm the owner for Hillman. So in order for you to continue to use Hillman Talk, you need to pay me. Now I can license the use of the word Hillman. Okay. So this is our first issue. Number one, a trademark application does not give you rights to anything. Only the registration of the trademark gives you rights. That's the difference between the little TM that you guys see and the R. The TM means, hey, someone has the intention of getting exclusive rights for the use of this. So don't even try to file an application because I filed it first. The little r is the only symbol that can be used to show ownership of a trademark. And if you use the little r before you get registered trademark rights, that is illegal. Okay. So it's been grinding my gears to see people say, oh, well, this person owns the name. Don't nobody own Hillman Todd, baby, because ain't no registered trademark applications up at the USPTO office. And what's probably going to happen is that when an examiner, because that's what happens when you file a trademark application, the USPTO office assigns what's called an examiner. Examiners are attorneys. Right? That work for the government, and they go through these applications, right? And they, I don't know what just happened. Can y'all still see me? Because my thing went dark. Oh, hold on, y'all. Drag the puzzle piece into place. Okay, sorry, y'all, because they were trying to cut me off. Anyways, you get assigned an examiner, which is an attorney that goes through all of the existing registered trademarks, right? And says, well, wait a minute, Hillman Talk. We already have someone who has registered rights to Hillman. So now you get what's called an office action. An office action is an official letter that comes from the examiner at the USPTO that says, hey, we don't think you deserve exclusive rights to the use of Hillman Talk because someone already owns the name Hillman. So you have a certain amount of time to write back to us and tell us why you should be able to trademark Hillman Talk. And in order usually to be successful at overcoming an office action, you have to hire an attorney because you're making legal arguments, okay? You're doing additional digging. So that's the first level. Say they overcome that, right? And say they don't get no office actions. They get approved by the USPTO. There is a 3 to 6 months window that's called publication. What the USPTO does is that they put in a newspaper, usually like the Gazette or something like that, hey, such and such person or such and such company has a pending trademark application for the use of the word Hillman Talk. Anybody who disagrees with this person being able to exclusively use Hillman Talk, you have this much time to write us and let us know that this person should not have exclusive right to it. So even once you pass the first level with the examiner at the USPTO, you still have to go through publication. So Bill Cosby or Viacom or whoever owns Hillman, the trademark for Hillman could come back and say, not so fast. All right. So again, education is very important. Nobody owns Hillman Talk currently. Nobody. Okay. There are, I believe, 3 pending trademark applications. Whoever filed it first will get first priority, but even still, they will have to prove that they were using it first. And even before we get there, the examiner has to allow them to even get that far. And it's not likely that it's going to happen because someone already has Hillman and the exclusive rights to the use of Hillman. So I believe like one of the classes that Cosby has it for is like clothing. So how are you going to sell merch with Hillman Talk on it? You already infringing on someone else's trademark rights. Again, I thoroughly enjoy the revolutionary movement that we have established here on TikTok with sharing knowledge with one another. But we have to, as the church people say, do everything in decency and in order. And one thing that I've learned from being a content creator is that people will suck the fun out of everything, like out of everything. I just want to encourage y'all that are on here that engage with my content. Do not be discouraged by what you guys are seeing. We're still going to be here. I'm still rocking with y'all. And again, I did this just because I wanted to give my community something. I wanted to empower you guys. I wanted to encourage you guys. I believe that knowledge is power. I am overwhelmed with the amount of feedback that I have gotten, positive feedback, people who have said, I always wanted to go to college and I just feel like this is my opportunity. I love that. Like, people are hungry for knowledge. And in a point in time where there's so much darkness and so many things that threaten our hope, I just don't think that we need to add additional darkness to that. The movement for about 2 weeks, I was absolutely cocoa. And honestly, the wind got knocked out of me with the results of this election. I was grieving for a while in a way I wasn't expecting. So this was like my first boost of like, yes, and it just felt really, really good. And it still feels good. It still feels good. I'm not gonna hold you. I'm not gonna hold you. It still feels good, and I'm not gonna let this damper what we have going on. I'm gonna continue to share. I'm gonna continue to encourage you guys to engage in meaningful, deep conversation about your understanding of how America is structured, how America works. Is it really free for all of us? Because I want to empower my community to understand that we have a lot of power. Everything that we know about the Constitution and rights and how the law works was shaped by our efforts and movements that we were at the forefront of. And so I don't want you guys to feel helpless. I know that those of us who voted differently absolutely do feel that way. But progress sometimes is slow. And I do believe that what we're seeing now is that we have gotten so much progress. This is a last ditch effort to try to regain some of that control. And they've been planning it for a while. And so it's a blitz, right? When you're in war and you're on the front lines, think of protests, right? What's the first thing they do? They throw tear gas at you, right? Because they want to mess up your vision. When you can't see clearly, you don't know who's coming at you. You don't know which way to strike, right? We have to remain calm. We got to see the forest through the trees. We got to not allow our vision to be clouded by the onslaught of what's going on. Let's make it very, very clear. America is a land of laws. America is built on checks and balances. And now is the time for them checks to start balancing. So Congress, where are you at? Supreme Court, where are you at? The power is in the people. We put those elected people up there in Washington. So now it's time for them to pay their just due. Okay. But yeah, don't be discouraged by, the drama. Don't be discouraged by what's going on. We're still a part of a very revolutionary movement, and let's just keep moving forward, y'all. But it's been grounding and encouraging through these changes. Thank you, Jazz. Appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone for remaining respectful and the dialogue that you guys have been having underneath the content too. I really do appreciate that, because this thumb, the block button, works, and this thumb is strong. Okay. I absolutely encourage intellectual conversation, but we got to keep it respectful. And it seems like respect is a rare thing nowadays, especially when we talk about politics or political issues, which some of this stuff shouldn't even be political, but that's neither here nor there. Anyways, it is now 10:07. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. New content will be dropping tomorrow. Tomorrow we will be talking about more about the civil rights movement, but specifically the Equal Protection Clause. And then later on in the week, we'll be talking about due process. The next few weeks are going to be pretty juicy for those of you guys who have taken the time to look at the syllabus. This is probably where we're going to be having some really, really good dialogue. But I really do encourage you guys, if you guys can make it on the lives on Monday nights, to come on with any questions. Hey, Sarah! To come on with any questions that you guys have. I'm here for you. Whatever I don't know, I will look up. Absolutely. My goal is to never answer a question from an uneducated space. I don't know everything, y'all, but what I don't know, I'm gonna find out. Okay. So I really do appreciate you guys for being here and believing in me. little on me. I really, really do. But I will see you guys in the new content that's dropping tomorrow. And then if you guys can join me next Monday, I'll be back for office hours again. But you guys stay safe and stay encouraged.